Okay, so this is an activist in New York, and he just kind of lets the media play out for itself without really any commentary on it. But it's titled "Status Coup." Talks about problems with the media, but he's doing the same thing. Initially, one of the videos I did recently where I got a troll comment, and the person was commenting on the fact that I said status quo. I made a reference to George Sheraton, and that just shows me again how ignorant some of those Vosh viewers are. That he didn't know what I was talking about. He's like, it's status quo. No, it's status quo. It's actually a show. Fuck's sake. Some
Workers
people
that
are
are organizing
so
union
goddamn
drives, the
ignorant.
workers that are organizing mutual aid, just people I meet that are suffering economically. I ask them, has your local news reached out to you for interviews? Has any independent outlet that's marginally progressive reached out? Not only do they tell me nobody's reached out, but they tell me when they reach out to certain outlets, they're either ignored or told why. Yeah, our boss doesn't want us.
That kind of doesn't even matter. Like we have invited the press to many various events, and then they just bump us. We don't even get any news coverage. This is true for the activists who recently marched behind the Rose Bowl parade. Um, there were a lot of news organizations that showed up, but only like really small publications actually talked about it. And in the case when we made history with Unite Here Local 11 collecting over 110,000 signatures to get a measure on the ballot in LA that would protect hotel workers, raise their minimum wage, make sure that they didn't have to work in incredibly strenuous situations, like it would limit how much work they would do. They would get panic buttons if they were assaulted by any of the guests or fellow employees, even really. You'd have a panic button, right? Over 110,000 signatures, a historic achievement. I didn't see it covered on any news outlets, despite the fact that there was like 5 cameras in front of us from various news agencies that were covering the event when it happened. But I think there was some other sort of like news story that came out that day that like pushed us out of the news.
Interview you. So there really is a media blackout. When I have the tagline, we cover what the corporate media covers up, we're not being cute. Like the corporate media literally covers up a lot of stories, and I am right.
They have to bury it for their sponsors, or for, if there's Starbucks workers that are out there striking, and Starbucks is one of the companies that buys ad through Sinclair, let's say Sinclair Broadcast isn't going to go cover it. One, because they never cover union strikes. I mean, hell, look on MSN. Nobody is talking about what's happening in France right now. There's only a few places that we're able to see it. I learned about it through social media, not through mainstream media.
Right.
They're not going to cover things that don't have to do with their bubble until they get so extreme that they can't ignore them anymore because a big story happens. And even in that point, they're not going to bring you the voices of the people impacted. They're going to bring on the CEO of Wells Fargo to talk about how, how homelessness has gone up 20% in 2022, which was a recent story I saw on CNN. The CEO of Wells Fargo is talking about homelessness in 2022 when Wells Fargo was one of the banks that was responsible for taking away people's homes. That's the news you're going to get. So without independent journalism, we're not going to hear those voices and those stories of people impacted, and their stories, they deserve to have their voice heard.
Is this really independent journalism though? Because like, is it really independent journalism? Because Jordan Sheridan has relationships with pretty much all of the other live streamers, and they completely protected him from his own Me Too movement when several of his own journalists came out against him. Which, by the way, from what I remember, like one of those stories I think actually happened when he was covering Standing Rock. But let's go.
Absolutely. Smash that like button, share this live stream. Let's give some shout outs before bringing on the legendary Francis Fisher. Thank you to the donors. Stephen Lewis, $50. Holy cow. Ed, $10. Alex, $20. Jean Pierre, $20. Ellen, $10. And Keith, $10. So we have already raised, I believe, $200. And we are at $6,330 raised of the $20,000 goal. So we're inching, we're getting there. Still got a couple hours to go. So thank you to all you folks who don't.
What's the goal for? Is that just to pay your paycheck, or like is that for an actual charity? Because there's nothing up on the screen that even says what people are donating to. Like, why are they donating money at this point? Like, don't you think it would behoove you to actually explain why people are sending you money? Where is this? It doesn't even say.
And hey, honestly, folks, even if you could only donate $2, $3, hey, it helps. It matters. So don't be shy. Even if you don't have much, you could donate any amount. And if you can't donate, that's fine too. We totally get it. But if you can, statusquo.com/donate, and we'll keep shouting you out. I want to bring on somebody that I'm.
It's got to be, right? If it's his web address, this is literally to donate to fund his effort of like this guy doesn't want to have to get a real job. He doesn't want to have to get a real job. He wants to live off of your donations. All right, let's go, Jordan.
In the Great Plains of North Dakota, and I think does terrific work and is now doing a film on Standing Rock. How are you doing, Francis Fisher?
Jordan, hello. God, it's been years.
It has. I still dream of you.
All right, okay.
Man.
Tell us, you're now in a film about Standing Rock. You've also been on The Sinner, which is a really popular show on Netflix and elsewhere. And what else have you been working on?
I just got back from Newfoundland, and I was doing a movie up there. And I'm back, and I'm just kind of resting and doing everything else, that you do when you're not.
Notice that there's no mention of Rust. There's no fucking mention of Rust. When Alec Baldwin accidentally killed the cinematographer on Rust, Francis Fisher was one of the very first people to come out and do an interview about it. And there has still yet to be any explanation of why she was crossing the picket line. Because the professional crew was on strike when this happened. But Francis somehow was still there to be an eyewitness to the events and give interviews about it, as far as I remember. She was one of the first people to come out and do interviews about the Alec Baldwin mishap. And yet the entire crew was on strike. So let's please tell me more about how progressive you are, Francis.
Working as an actor. Yeah, let's see. The Sinner is on Netflix now. The Sinner season 4. And the movie that I did, the first narrative about Standing Rock, it's our friend Josh Tickell, who was at Standing Rock when we were there.
Yeah.
And so it's a narrative that he
Even
co-wrote with William Mapother. And it's just, one story of many stories. Hopefully it will trigger people to want to make their own narratives about what was going on at Standing Rock. And learning that, he goes in as a journalist, William does, to tell a story about the pipeline and how good this oil company is to be giving jobs to people. And when he gets there, he learns from the indigenous people who are there how bad it is. It completely shifts his perspective of what's really going on. Because as you guys were saying before, there was no news coverage of that. A little bit when Shailene got arrested. But other than that, you and Unicorn Riot were the only ones on the ground.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's show a trailer because I watched, before I fell asleep last night, I watched an hour. So I got 20 minutes left. But let's show a little bit of the film on Sacred Ground.
Well, I guess we're not going to see it, are we, DJ? You got a window up.
I'm really glad you're here, Dan.
The media is all over this Native American protest up there, and we need a no BS profile on that pipeline.
Who do you work for? Big oil?
I'm a journalist. My job is to help you tell the best story you can.
And what story's that?
Whatever you write, whatever you see.
Promise me he'll come back.
You're with me, aren't you, Dan? Welcome to the circus. Sure you're up for this?
That'll move 500,000 gallons a day.
Are you here to redeem yourself or make money for somebody else?
You have a responsibility to tell the truth about what's going on here.
You've had some trouble with some of the workers and some of the native women. You should do some research.
You know, transporting oil is risky. The question is, how do you minimize the risk?
What did you mean the land is protected by the U.S. Constitution?
Everything you see there legally belongs to the Sioux Nation.
I was hired to find out what's going on.
No, you were hired by us.
Is he a liability?
Yeah, he's a problem.
It was important, Julie. I couldn't just ignore it.
Why? I'm your wife!
We have enough oil to last a century. But it's useless if we can't move it.
We can't have him turning the tables on us. Strong warriors never stand down, even in the face of defeat.
You moved the pipeline right to the mouth of the reservation. It's their only water source.
You can
Just
see
let
any
me
of it.
explain.
Who wrote this article?
We destroyed their past, but you're destroying their future.
America doesn't run on fairy dust.
That's true.
By the way, I was looking at the title of Jordan's video, and it is. I've been hearing for over a year that they want to push Marianne Williamson for running for president. That's even more ridiculous than running Ro Khanna. It's so she's so spacey to begin with, and I don't think she's ever won anything. Right? She ran against Ted Lieu on, it's the second richest congressional district in the country. And she floundered there, She is deeply involved with this Bernie's coffee shop crowd. That's where I met her. These folks are just so far out. They're so new age that... it's difficult for common people to actually relate to them. And so when they try and assert themselves as the people who really relate to the working class, most of the working class doesn't have the luxury of exploring new age shit. Most of us are working all day, we take a shower at night, and we get in bed after we've cooked our dinner. We're not out there looking for crystals and shit. We're not out there looking for our herbal remedies. We just are trying to get by in life and actually earn a living. These motherfuckers are rich. They're rich, and they're trying to tell all of us how it should be, which is amazing to me. They show up at a few of these protests and they think, look at how awesome I am. I'm so awesome because I showed up to this protest. I'm going to do a movie about this protest. This is why, back in the 80s, we used to have all those festival tours. Band Aid, Live Aid, Farm Aid, Freedom Fest. We had all these big festival concerts to raise money for various... mostly African nations, I think, but the Farm Aid was for local farmers, right, in America. But there were all these charitable events, and the reason they stopped is because people got burned out. People got burned out, and that's kind of the same thing as what Michael Richards was talking about the other day with DSA, that they're seeing a huge decline in their membership. People are getting burned out. Because if you don't actually achieve the results, if you have too many people trying to co-opt the efforts, and the money doesn't actually go to the intended recipients, and instead there are people at the top getting rich, then people get burned out and they're like, well, fuck it, I guess I can't make a difference.
My only grievance is there was not enough of you in this film. I know you were filming some other stuff at the same time, but I wanted to ask you. I think it's very interesting that they took the angle through a journalist lens, because honestly, there were more documentary filmmakers at Standing Rock than actual. Not that they don't do journalism, but then traditional journalists. What do you think that was? I thought that was really effective because.
Here's the thing, DJ Elf 7. I could pull up the original video, but I don't want to give him the hit. I would much rather give you the hit on your video, but you can't put a box over the window like that. You can't do that shit. You got to at least let us see what we're supposed to be looking at.
He was kind of having these light bulb moments throughout the film that, the corporate narrative that he is often a part of is total BS.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were saying, nobody was there on the ground except the independent journalists like you, and they're documentary filmmakers. But it's something that because of the overlords who are funding all of these big news companies, they don't want that information out there, how bad it is, So I thought it was effective too to make him a journalist who was, reporting for the other side, so to speak. I know. You saw Marielle Hemingway's beautiful face in that. Josh had written that role for me because he wanted somebody who was a positive force there, training people to, come into the onto Ochetti and be peaceful and not be violent in any way. So everyone got training when they got there. But I was working on I had another job, so I couldn't do it. And Josh says, I want you in this film. I said, well, what else is there? He goes, well, there's the person on the other side who's the, head of the news company. I said, oh, okay, I'll do it. I'm used to playing bad guys. You got to give them the air, the breathing space.
Okay, I see what you're doing here. You're like typing out an email. This was a mistake because you're showing us the email addresses of whoever it is. My eyesight's not good enough to actually read it on my mobile phone. But you just put this right up on the screen. You're typing an email while you're doing this screen record, and then loading it up like that. I mean, maybe you want us to be able to read what you're typing, but you're also exposing the addresses. Maybe that's intentional. I don't know. But we also cannot see what we're supposed to be watching because you've done it this way.
To show the contrast. So, right. Yeah.
And what made you? Because honestly, in my coverage, there's a handful of the same kind of Hollywood actresses, actors that are involved with these kind of protests. Obviously, Susan Sarandon, Jane Fonda has been legendary with her activism. You, Standing Rock, and other things. Richard Cromwell was out at Standing Rock. But James for you, Cromwell. James Cromwell, kind of for you, what drew you to it? Because it wasn't your first rodeo.
It was just it was kismet. Actually, I had a job in Birmingham, Alabama, and then I had to go up to Canada to do another job, and I had a couple of weeks, and I thought, I've been hearing about this. I didn't hear about it on the mainstream news. I don't know how I heard about Standing Rock, to tell you the truth. Maybe it was Shailene's,
I'm gonna. She gets all kind of weird and crazy in this interview, but I'll just tell you the time that I met her. I went to, I think it was either the second or the third annual Bernie's Coffee Shop celebration, I guess. Bernie's Coffee Shop is a shell. It's like a movie set. It's right across the street from like one of their, like the American Film Academy or something, like one of the big buildings that in West Hollywood that, like, it might be one of their union, I don't know. But it's a shop. It's not a working restaurant. It doesn't have, like, running water. It doesn't have, they have to bring in a generator to have electricity in there. They put a porta potty out front. It's kind of a gross situation. And so I'm fortunate that I've only gone once. This was in 2018. The entire night, from what I remember, she was hanging out with Michelle Manos and her boyfriend Jeremy White, who are two of the most thuggish progressives I've ever, if you could even call them progressives. I don't even think they really are progressives. They're the type of progressives who are like, I hate the Democratic Party and I will never participate, but I'm going to run for delegate. Okay. Please vote for me for delegate because I am going to run, but I hate the Democratic Party, right? This is how they roll. But Jeremy also, there are stories out there. There are 2 stories of activists who claim that he either assaulted him or he threatened assault. He threatened to sick a dog on a man of color. And there's a third activist, a female Latina, who had a rock thrown through her window saying that she wasn't a true progressive, where this person, he used to live with her. And so she highly suspects that it was him who did it. Michelle has always had his back and defended him. And the 2 of them somehow worked their way up, probably with Carlos Marroquin, into the Bernie network, but none of them were able to get hired by the campaign, and so they got really butthurt about that. But Frances was hanging out with them all night. That's her people. Those are her people. And my only interaction with her was that she was upset that I was hanging out with Don Ford that night, because Don was trying to help me get home safely, because Tim Johnson had been slithered away by Fiorella Isabel to get poured a ton of wine down his throat. He was slobbering drunk. It was so disgusting. It was one of the most pathetic and ugly things I've ever seen. And I had to drive that motherfucker home. He was grabbing my hair while I was driving and pulling my head back. I tried to put some food in him and stop at a Denny's close to his house. And we almost got kicked out because motherfucker kept trying to force feed me. And I'm like, I'm not eating anything, okay? Just fucking put some food in your belly so that you stop acting like an asshole. And then I took him back home to his dad's house. But this was my experience with Frances Fisher, is her sitting with some of the worst people I've ever fucking met, having immediate judgment of me without even talking to me, and supporting all of these toxic motherfuckers at Bernie's coffee shop. So it's hard for me to be like, yes, you represent the activists who went to Standing Rock. Because you know what? I actually stayed with an activist who was at Standing Rock. I stayed with her for a couple of days in Iowa. And she went through a lot of shit because she was there. She went through a lot of shit because she was there. She ended up having the FBI on her tail for a couple of years. And at the time that I was there, she was going after factory farms. She was going after the farming industry and the toxins that the conditions for the animals and the toxins they're putting into the air with the overconcentration of animals and ammonia in the air. I have worked with real activists, and these performative pieces of shit just drive me nuts. Anyway, if you want to watch this video, you can find it